Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Death Card Tactics we're going to be looking at the best Death Card stratagems and when to use them. So starting like the Taliman, the Codex and the stratagems to bring you what I think are some of our best stratagems. So with no further ado, let's get started. So today is the 3rd of January 22. Big Happy New Year to everyone, and I hope Nurgle blesses our dice and our 40k experience in 2022. Maybe less Corona and COVID contagions in the world, but Nurgle's power is omnipotent. Like a Tallyman, I made a small tally of my units so far, and Death Card now I'm up to 7,600 points, almost 6,200 points are painted. I still have a couple of units to paint, a couple of Mythic Blight Holders I got over Christmas. Thousand Suns that I started collecting in 2021 is soon to be the second biggest army. A lot of painting there, a lot of gold trim for the Thousand Suns, and then I have some Ultramarines because I was collecting. Yeah, if you get the starter boxes, you get a lot of Space Marines, and nice to have something blue in the collection as well. Some other stuff, I have a couple of demons, etc. Some orcs, so some old stuff. In total, 18,000 points of Warhammer, 11,000 points painted. Let's see if I can continue painting in 2022. But as I said in this video, I will try to give you an overview of the best stratagems for Death Card and when to use them, looking at the stratagems per phase, and then basically my mind map, the GeneralJannis Playbook. What do I typically tend to use in games, and why I run out of command points halfway through the game. Before I start, a big thanks to my patrons for all the great support. Thank you, really, guys. You are the ones that make this channel continue. So let's take a look on the stratagems. So starting with the pre-battle stratagems, of course, we can equip our army with additional relics, traits. We can also give our champions relics, and some of these relics and traits can be really strong. So for one command point, for example, if you take some of them you need to have for the Foul Blightspawn, the Revolting Stench Vats. It's really important. You can't get any more gain for one command point in the game that you can get bringing for example, the Foul Blightspawn with Revolting Stench Vats, the Tollkeeper Relic, Exploding Sixes. Again, difficult to use a command point more efficiently in the game. The Plague Skull of Glothilla, a couple of 4.7 mortal wounds on average for this relic. Again, difficult to match that in the game. So of course, using a couple of upgrades before the game will save you on the command point. Will, of course, you start with lower command point, but you will need maybe less command points to do. Arch Contaminator Warlord trait allows you to reroll a lot instead of using command rerolls for some crucial hits. The River of Glorious Entropy, for example, is very strong. You can have also traits that save better instead, again, getting the characters to live longer and have better saves, etc. So of course, you don't want to start with very little command points, but I think you can spend, let's say, if I start with 7 command points, I'm quite happy. It's also Nurgle's number in a 2,000 point game, but it can be that if you play the Terminus Est, you will be the Terminus Est is so hungry for command points that it's probably, for that one, it's probably better to save a bit on the relics to have more to use on the battle stratagems. If you play the Wretched Plague Company, you can use some of these to upgrade to make him a stronger psyker for smaller games, as in my videos for 500 point, 1,000 point lists. The Wretched is a very strong unit, the Plague Caster there. Chaos Spawn, if you're bringing a big unit of Chaos Spawn, it can be worth to upgrade them, but normally if you only bring one, don't bother spending the command point in this before the battle. Moving on to the command phase, I think here are our best stratagems that always thinking of using. I think one of the best is the Dead Walk again. where we can roll 7 dice for a Poxwalker unit that has suffered some losses, and then on 3 pluses we bring equal an amount of models back. So we could potentially bring back up to 7. Normally, maybe you can get 4 or 5 Poxwalkers back. In itself, it doesn't sound much, but it's really useful as a trick, so you can extend your line. Because if you have your unit of Poxwalkers, it suffers some losses. Then when you bring the map, you can put them forward, so they can come closer to an objective. They can maybe only move there and make an action, or if they stay alive for one more turn contesting an objective, it can really be strong. You can only use it once per unit, but it's if you have the opportunity, if you have some losses, it's really useful to do extending your line, especially because Death Guard is so slow off the mark. Sometimes this can really help us. For Terminus Est, if we use the Terminus Est, then it's imperative to use the Unleash the Horde, 2 command points. You get +3 inch move to all your Poxwalker units. So that should be probably used every command phase, as long as you have your horde of Poxwalkers left in the Terminus Est. If you don't have the Terminus Est, of course, you don't have access to this stratagem. So in command phase, the Deadwalk, again, I think, is the one to always consider and use cleverly. So let's say this is the super rank, and then if you have, let's say, normal, good rank, A and B rank, let's say, then we have the Flash Outbreak. This allows us to copy a contagion and increase the range of all our contagions by 1 round. So one unit can get a specific good additional contagion. It's most helpful to get the inexorable Ferric Blight copied and in forward advance, so a lot of units maybe can shoot and benefit from the increased AP, or the Gloaming Blow to stop enemy rerolls up the board. You need to copy that probably to a fast unit that goes forward. But this is a bit tricky as well. 2 command points is quite a lot, and it's quite costly, and it requires you some planning, especially, let's say, if you go first in a game. Should you use the Flash Outbreak in the first turn? Should you wait? Do you know if you put it on a 30 blow drone, will it survive the shooting so that you get use of the Flash Outbreak? So it could be a bit tricky to use, even if it's on paper very strong. I struggle a bit to find out should I use it or should I not, and it's always good to keep 2 command points in the bank later on. If you play the Ferryman, the On Droning Wings stratagem for 1 command point gives 6-inch range to the Virion Aura. So if you have them, of course, consider this. Adding, for example, more to Foul Blightspawn's Fight Last Aura, or the Plague Surgeon to give him a 9-inch bubble of 6+ Feel No Pain. So of course, if you take the Ferryman, you should try to use the On Droning Wings. That's the main reason to take the Ferryman in the first place. Some other stratagems that could be used in the command phase but are quite situational, and I don't use them so often. You can use the Blight Bombardment, but it's very expensive, 3 command points. If you have the Lord of Irons, it's 2 command points. You could surprise your opponent to try to flush him out, but even if you succeed, and the opponent might not move, and you will not be doing so much damage. It's more like a psychological bombardment rather than a very heavy duty bombardment. Release the toxins, diseased effluence. You can use these occasionally for characters, probably during the end game, where you have your characters involved close to the enemy lines. Maybe if you have some left, you could use some of these stratagems to deal a couple of mortal wounds. It could be interesting, but normally I never tend to use these stratagems here. If we go to the movement and psychic phase, that's quite easy for Death Guard stratagems. We have nothing here, nothing to help our movement or psychic phase. We can only use, let's say, the generic command rerolls, but it would be nice if we had something that allowed us to move twice or something. But yeah, unfortunately, nothing much to do stratagem wise in the movement and the psychic phase, other than the core stratagems. Then if we move on to the shooting phase, here I think one of our strongest, and this is particularly because I tend to enjoy playing a couple of Plague Scrollers in my lists. The Disgusting Force, I think, is a very strong stratagem. It's very good for the Plague Scroller Mortar, especially if you have to target something with a 3-wound target. The Mortar has a 2-wound profile, but it becomes a 3-wound profile. So that's really helpful against something like Eradicators or Hive Guard. Now the Tyranids that can hide the Hive Guards and shoot our infantry, if we can land a couple of mortar shots, they miss their saves, and then we can we outright kill one Hive Guard per shot that hit, or like the Eradicators. Of course, when you tend to use this Disgusting Force, then you have to roll the number of mortar shots. So prepare to have an additional CP on hand if you get a 1 for the number of shots. If you score a hit, remember to spread the mortal wounds around it. I think it's quite strong on a castle to deal a couple of mortal wounds early on to some supportive characters. Then it might make the game a bit more easy. The Blightening is also very strong, allowing us to shoot 3. We can select 3 models that have grenades. That's typically Plague Marines, Virions, or characters that are, especially if they are in engagement range at the start of our phase, we get 18 auto-hit grenades. It can clear out horde models. It helped me also killing a Culexus assassin that couldn't be targeted in other way, and he was like, we could only hit him on a 6+, but with auto-hit grenades, I finally got rid of him. So the Blightening is really strong if you have models with grenades. If you tend to play a lot of Terminators, you don't have so much of the grenade models, let's say. Then we have some of the let's say some of the stratagems can be used in both shooting or fight phase. Vermid Whispers is one of them. So you can give +1 to hit for a large unit, for a unit of Terminator, and that's quite strong on a large unit of Blightlord in the shooting. But I think it's best to use the Vermid Whispers in melee. The bolters are not super threatening, let's say. And again, if you use the virulent rounds, making the bolters count as plague weapons, you get some rerolls. You can also use Arch Contaminator if you're shooting something close by. The best use is on a large unit. If you have a 10-man Blightlord with a lot of combi bolters, you can use it, but still it's quite underwhelming. The virulent rounds, I did some calculation, and you only get, let's say, 1 wound extra from the virulent rounds, even on a big squad of Blightlords. If you're shooting on something that has a 2+ save, it doesn't get you very far if you can score a couple more hits. The Cyclic Corrosion is an interesting stratagem for 2 command points, but this, like the Flash Outbreak, requires a bit of planning. So basically, you tag an enemy with a plague weapon. You can do it in your fight phase or your shooting phase, but it counts for the whole turn. So it's better used in the shoot phase if you want to use it. If you really need something to go down, if you really have some very strong enemy that you need to make every hit count, it can help. So we can target it with something like a Blight Launcher or a Plagueverse Scroller with a Mortar or Entropy Cannons, and then everything that shoots on this tagged corroded target can reroll once to wound. And this helps, of course, non-plague weapons like the Contemptor with Volkites. I think that can be a very strong combo. Rerolling once to wound allows you to get more sixes to wound, giving you more mortal wounds with the Volkites. Also, the multi-meltas, the missiles from the Mephitic Blightholders would benefit. If you don't have a lot of non-plague weapons, of course, don't use Cyclic Corrosion. Only for bolters, it doesn't really matter so much. Eternal Hatred, 2 command points, +1 to wound for bubonic infantry. I think it's better to save this one in melee. In the shooting phase, it's a bit expensive, but if you can get on wounding from 5+ to 4+, or 4+ to 3+, it could be worth it, but you need to be a bit, it's quite expensive, and you need to be a bit selective about it. Probably the Blightlords and our Plague Marines or the Death Shroud, it's better to save it for the melee phase. The Overwhelming Generosity is also quite good stratagem. plus 6-inch range for plague weapons. I think this is good for our auto hit 12-inch weapons that can become 18-inch, and it's a bit situational. If you are just outside of range of shooting with a foul blight spawn, could be interesting to invest the command point to be able to shoot on some particularly nasty target. The fire fever, let's say lower grade here. The fire fever, I think it's a strong one. If you use a hellbrute, typically a lot of people are not using hellbrute so much competitively, but if you have a hellbrute, definitely use it. The poxmongers, the bilious blood rush, the demon engines locked in combat, they can shoot better and allowed to shoot the blast weapons. If you play the poxmongers, it's a good one, but it's you will not take poxmongers just to use these stratagems. Again, Mortarion Sons to use the plague brewers can give you a bit extra damage on flamer weapons, but you wouldn't take the Mortarion Son just to use this stratagem. But if you do, remember to use them. They are quite cheap and effective in these situations. Then we move on to the charge phase. Again, like movement and psychic, we don't have any stratagem to use in the charge phase. Unfortunately, I would give anything to get something like +1 to charge or reroll something. But yeah, apart from the rerolling the charge roll with the command reroll, we don't have anything in our own charge phase, unfortunately. If we then move to the fight phase, where Death Guard is naturally strong, I think one of the best ones, the best stratagem that gives the biggest damage output per command point is the Mutant Strained. It's very good for Poxwalkers, and they can surprise and punch way above their weight, dealing mortal wounds on their hit rolls. Their weapons are not so strong. The AP 0, the damage is 1. They cannot do a lot of damage to any strong target without the stratagem, but when they use the stratagem, they can deal a lot of mortal wounds. They could kill off a character or something like that. It's a very special, strong combo with the Harbinger's reroll all to hit, the Wrathful of Dead, allowing you to fish for more mortal wounds. You will be getting, if you use it on a big squad, 20-man Poxwalkers will be getting 10 mortal wounds with both stratagems, and re-rolling everything to get 6. You can get even more. So it's really a mortal wound bomb. That's why also if you play the Terminators, this is a big damage dealer, and this is again sucking 2 command points out of your pool of command points. But again, very strong. Of course, if you only have, let's say, 5-6 Poxwalkers left, it's not worth using. But again, a big unit of Poxwalkers, really strong. If you have one engaged, use the Mutant Strain at least. In normal good rank, let's say the Vermid Whispers, as we saw, +1 to hit. This helps a large unit of Blight Lords, a large unit of Death Shroud. When they use the heavy profile, they get -1 to hit. They get +1 to hit from here. Of course, if you have Taliman and he gives them +1 to hit already from his ability, you don't need to use Vermin Whispers on top, but it's a cheap, let's say, +1 to hit for 1 command point for our Terminators. The Eternal Hatred again, +1 to wound. If we have our Terminators or a melee unit of Plague Marines fighting a high toughness, high value vehicle target and we need to bring it down, Eternal Hatred can really turn the tables here, but again, 2 command points, quite expensive. Haze of Corruption is good if we have damage to, let's say, the flail weapons or the Death Shroud don't lead it so much. They have a damage 2 weapons, but they can use their reaping profiles to get more attacks. But for our Blight Lords with flails and Plague Marines with flails, fighting a horde enemy that needs to be removed from an objective, we can use the Haze of Corruption, especially the Cleaver. The D6 Cleaver for Plague Marines can really kill a lot of, let's say, opponent racks or something if you can land some hits and use the Haze of Corruption. Break the Spirits is a good combo for the Terminators. For example, Vermid Whispers and Break the Spirits. -4 leadership can be good versus a horde to make them fail a morale. Of course, some opponents like Tyranids, they don't take morale in Synaptic Link range, so no need to bother there. But it could be situationally a good stratagem. And Befouled incubators for a character fighting a horde infantry can deal up to 3 mortal wounds, and then demonic gluttony we can use for a demon engine model in melee. This is good for a damaged Mora drone having only, let's say, a few wounds left, and you need to keep it alive. You can use this, and it can regain up to 3 wounds per phase. It can kill a lot of horde infantry, and it can get some wounds back. If you can get it to fight one turn more, it really pays for 1 command point. The situational ones are the trench fighters. If you have, it's applicable to Plague Marines. I kind of like this one because I typically play Plague Marines. Most of the units don't take so many Plague Marines, most of the lists. If you need to kill off some infantry with high volume of attacks, the trench fighter gives you a bit more knives, and with AP -1 and being plague weapons, and if you have Arch Contaminator close by, it's not so bad. The Creeping Blight makes plague weapons on 6+ to wound, counting as AP4. This doesn't help a lot, especially if you fight something with an invul save. It's you don't get any big value of the Creeping Blight, unfortunately. And then we have a couple of stratagems in the opponent phase. In the enemy shooting, we have the Belching Fumes. This is a quite good stratagem if you are having Mephitic Blight holders in your army. It's a good protection if you have the unit of 2, because for 1 command point you have the number of shooting attacks, or you're forcing basically maybe your opponent to shoot at some other targets. The Cloud of Flies is a bit expensive. It can be situationally good to protect some backfield Plague Marines or something you need to keep an objective and you have some Poxwalker screen in front. But 4 command points is really expensive for our Terminators. It could be crucial at some point in the game, but again, you cannot sustain using 4 command points in the enemy shooting phase. It needs to be, let's say, a one-off where you really need to be avoid being shot at. The smoke screen could be helpful if you have a Rhino or a Miasmic Malignifier, but not super helpful as if you don't of course use these units. In the enemy charge phase, not unlike our own charging phase, we have a couple of stratagems. The Inexorable Spheric Miasma is quite good for 1 command point, giving -2 to charge. And this is going to be really good to protect backfield units from deep strike charges. Then you would be, if you apply this, your opponent would have an 11-inch charge, depending on where you need it on the table. The -2 to charge you can be really a strong one. So if you have Inexorable, of course, remember to use this. Mortarion's Anvil also has the good Relaptic Assault stratagem. It's potentially quite strong. Up to 3 Mortarion's Anvil. You can get a lot of, let's say, any number of Mortarion Anvil units that are 3 inches away from the enemy unit that charged can perform heroic intervention. So this is quite strong. In practice, though, I think the opponent could be charging in a way that you cannot use this so much. If he doesn't, then you can get your Blight Lords or Death Rod or anything coming in and dealing a lot of wounds in melee. The Dark Cravings is strong for the Furtive Blow drone, especially the Mower drone. It can make a heroic intervention of 6 inches, so this can be difficult for the opponent, let's say, if he charges something a bit more exposed and you have the Furtive Blow drone. 6 inches can help you. 3 inches here can be a bit more difficult to make it count. And then we have a couple of stratagems for taking casualties. We can use the Putrid Detonation to auto-explode a vehicle. This is quite situational, and it costs 2 command points for our big vehicles with 10 wounds and more. And normally our Mephitic Blight Holders and Furtive Blow drones, they still explode on a 4+, and don't hurt our units, so it could be interesting just to roll for it instead of paying the command points. If there is, of course, an enemy unit with very little wounds left, of course it can be helpful to pay 1 command point to make it lose the final wound, let's say. The eruption of field, you can auto-explode a character. Again, it's quite similar. It could be situationally good. I tend to forget this one, but again, only in a situation where you maybe the opponent character or opponent heavy unit only has very few wounds left, and you really need to kill it. Of course, on top of all these death card stratagems, we have the core book stratagems, the command reroll, allowing you to reroll a hit, wound, etc. It's useful. I tend maybe to use it a bit too much in my games. I think it's important to use it tactically where it can make the most difference. You have a risk of burning too much command points on the command rerolls, but it can also give you a good advantage, especially if you use it early on. It could be the difference of killing a unit or not killing it, or it can be a difference of one of our units surviving instead of being killed. Where it makes the most difference, in my opinion, is if we use it to make a reroll on a charge roll after a deep strike, or we have, let's say, a 7 or 8 inch charge that we miss, and it's really important for us to get our Terminators involved. Then, of course, spending one command point to get another chance can really be game changing. Of course, I typically tend to save one command point to have for the charge phase. It could be also useful if we need the psychic power really to go off, and it's really crucial, for example, to get Miasma of Pestilence or Mortarion or something like this, where you need it and if it fails, you should be able to re-roll that. Again, if we have some damage that is a heavy dealing damage, maybe the opponent doesn't have a big save on that, and we miss it, we miss our entropy cannon, and we will be hitting on 3+. Maybe it's useful to reroll again if it could potentially kill the enemy target. And again, on the opposite side, if we have a unit of ours that is almost being killed, and if we have, let's say, good save on a 3+ and 4+, and we roll badly, it could be worth of sacrificing one command point for the opportunity to save the unit, maybe forcing another enemy unit to overkill our unit instead of shooting on something else. The counteroffensive is really strong core stratagem, where we can. It's expensive for 2 command points, but it's always good to have 2 command points to spare in the enemy phase after the enemy has charged. It keeps them on the toes. If they charge multiple units, then we can interrupt and make, for example, if our Death Shroud go first or Plague Marines melee oriented, they can really do a lot of damage if we have the 2 command points. If we don't have the command points, it's more easy for the opponent to just charge what he wants and not think about our counter-offensive. The Overwatch, for 1 command point, we are not let's say, the best shooty army. It's quite situational. It could be useful for an auto-hit unit with speeders or the Foul Blightspawn. Also good to have 1 command point. Remember, if you only have 2 left, don't spend it on Overwatch. Keep it for the counter-offensive. And then cut them down, the core stratagem that allows us to roll when an enemy unit falls back, and we have the opportunity to do mortal wounds on 6s for every model that we have engaged. I think this is an overlooked stratagem. I haven't seen many people use it, and not many people know of it somehow. I think it's quite interesting, and if you have an opponent that only has a couple of few wounds left and he just fall back some of the opponents, they can fall back and shoot or fall back and charge again or something like that. Remember to use the cut them down. If we have, let's say, 10 models in 10-15 models or a lot of models with that enemy unit, we will be able to roll a lot of dice, and we should be able to score a couple of mortal wounds to take down a surprise enemy. Finally, trying to list the stratagems I typically use and the mental, let's say, in my playbook, let's say, pre-battle. I think, as I said, important to equip the relics, like the Warp Insect Hive relic, the Plague Skull of Clothila, the Reaper of Glorious Entropy, of course, Tollkeeper, Revolting Stenchvats, and traits like the Arch Contaminator or the Hulking Physique or some of the others, or making the Plaguecaster a wretched upgraded Plaguecaster. So of course, don't forget to use a couple of command points also before the battle. And then in our own turn, when we are on the offensive, in the command phase, of course, Terminus Est, always remember to unleash the Horde. The decked walk again, really strong. Any damaged Poxwalker unit, we can extend the lines and get some Poxwalkers back. This can be really strong, especially since we are normally so slow. The flash outbreak, always, this is a bit tricky. I always thinking about using it or not using it. It requires a couple of more planning. Then in the movement phase, probably we don't use so much, but I think sometimes it could be useful to use a command point reroll if we need a vital advance to come to an objective. It could be important to spend a command point to reroll an advance roll. In the psychic phase, likewise, it could be a crucial power we need to go off. So always good to have a command point reroll, let's say, on hand. In the shooting phase, I typically use the Disgusting Force with the Plague Scrollers, the Blightening if I have something with grenades in engagement range. The Cyclic Corrosion is also a bit tricky to use because it requires a lot of planning, but it's better to use it here than in the fight phase. It can be expensive, but if it's some very nasty Tyrannid monster or something and you have Contemptors with Volkites, use it first, tag it, and then you get rerolls and you can do much more damage. And again, command reroll only on crucial attacks that have the ability. If it's like a 50, where you can probably get it to die, it could be worth it. In the charge phase, as I said, command reroll on a deep strike unit, and then this could be a game changer, but it's still a gamble. Rerolling a 9+ charge is only 48-50% chance to do it, even with the reroll. In the fight phase, as I said, if you have some big unit of Poxwalkers, use the Mutant Strain, and of course the Wrath of the Dead if you are Harbingers of Terminus Est. For the Terminators, remember the Vermid Whispers and Break Their Spirits, and again, Trench Fighters, I kind of like that, and then command reroll on an attack that can be a crucial game changer. Again, maybe you are able to take down a big character with a high value attack. In the opponent's phase, remember if the enemy falls back, remember to cut them down. As I said, I haven't seen many people use that, but it's only one command point and it could be a game changer as well. The enemy psychic phase, it could be interesting to keep some command reroll on a crucial deny test. For example, there is a Grey Knight's psychic power that adds extra damage, which really counteracts the Disgusting Resilience. Could be interesting to, if we can deny that, it could be worth a reroll. In the enemy shooting, the Belching Fumes, the Cloud of Fly is very, very expensive, so only use on a few occasions. Command reroll on a crucial save. In the enemy charge, if you are the Inexorable, remember the Ferric Miasma. If you are Mortarian's Anvil, remember the Relaptic Assault. The Dark Cravings to get a Mower Drone is really strong if you can do it. The Mower Drone can really do a lot. And then overwatching one command point with auto-hit weapons preferably. In the enemy fight phase, the counter-offensive, the core stratagem is important, and again, keeping some crucial saves for rerolls for some particularly nasty damage that the opponent can do, where you maybe have a 4+ invul. And then in the casualties, you can make some explosions, but not as helpful. So the most important defensively, I think, is the counter-offensive and some of the enemy charge ones where we can make them fail a charge. So, summary and final thoughts. I think overall it could seem daunting for new players to remember all stratagems, but I think try then to focus on a few key ones. There are not so many if you list them per phase and you list them for the units you have. There are not so many, and it's not so difficult to remember. Like in the playbook I showed you. Of course, there are some more tricks, etc. But there are a few key ones that you should try to memorize and remember to use. That are particularly useful for the units that you normally have in your lists. The pre-battle use of command points can be important, and it could save up on command points in the long run. If you get the Warp Insect Hive, you reroll free automatically for Demon Prince, and you don't need to spend an expensive command point reroll in a crucial step of the battle, for example. The Taliman, as always, a very useful unit, giving us more command points, giving us more use of stratagems. I think the strongest death card stratagems, at least that fit my playstyle, and in my opinion, I think it's the Deadwalk again, the Disgusting Force, the Mutant Strain with the Wrathful Dead, the Blightening, Vermit Whispers, and Break Their Spirits. And I think the ones where I struggle, I know they are strong, but I'm a bit struggling to use them tactically correct. I think it's the Flash Outbreak and the Cyclic Corrosion. It's a bit more of should I use it, should I not use it, where some of the others are more like, okay, I'm shooting with my Plague Scholar on some hive cards, of course I will use Disgusting Force. Managing the command points is important during the game, and especially keeping a few command points for the crucial rerolls and the overwatching and the fighting interrupts, the counteroffensive. The 2 command points here can really make a difference in the opponent's phase. So this concludes the video. What do you think about the deck card stratagems? What do you typically use in your playbook? And let me know of some particularly strong combos you have used. If you like this video, please press like and subscribe to my channel, where I will be bringing you more death card tactics and analyzing enemy threats coming up. And now I'm looking forward to see what other meta armies we will be facing. If you want to support my efforts, please visit my Patreon page. Again, big thanks to all my patrons for their great support. And with these words, GeneralJannis is signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.